For 2 years, before the 1992 NBA draft, Denise Pearl Watkins was the only one who waited for Shaquille O'Neal after practice. Not because she wanted anything, just so he wouldn't have to walk home alone in the dark. Then one morning, he was gone. No phone call, no explanation, just a short note on the kitchen table, and 32 years of silence. Denise never got rich, never got famous. She was carrying a tray of coffee at a small diner on the edge of Columbus, Ohio. It was 7:20 in the morning, raining. Her shoes were worn through and soaking wet. She was raising a 19-year-old son on her own after her husband walked out in 2018. Then that morning, the diner door opened. A man who stood 7 feet 1 had to duck his head to get inside. Denise looked up. She went still. Her heart didn't beat faster. It just stopped for a moment. The note from 1992, she still had it. She never threw it away. She never told anyone what it really said. So why did Shaq come back? And what was in that note that kept her holding on for 32 years? Atlanta, 11 o'clock at night. 14th floor of an office building on Peachtree Street. Shaquille O'Neal put down his pen. On the desk was a $12 million partnership deal with an East Coast logistics company. Signed. Done. His assistant stepped out and closed the door softly. The room was just him and the cold light from his laptop screen. He looked out the window. Rain was falling over Atlanta. The streetlights spread out across the wet pavement in long yellow and red streaks. Beautiful in the way things look beautiful when you feel nothing. Not tired, not happy, just empty. He opened the desk drawer. Under a stack of invoices, under a pile of unsorted business cards, under a USB drive he didn't remember, was a small clear plastic bag. Inside was a sheet of paper, yellowed at the corners, wrapped like something fragile. The handwriting belonged to a 20-year-old. Quick, slightly slanted left. Blue ink, faded with time. He didn't read it. He just looked at it. Then he closed the drawer. His phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Raymond Okafor, the private investigator he'd hired 2 years ago, with one simple instruction: watch, report, don't do anything. The message was 2 lines. The kid dropped out this semester. Short $1,340. She's picking up late-night shifts at a laundromat to cover it. Shaq read it twice. He put the phone down. He looked at the drawer again. He had known Denise Pearl Watkins's address for 2 years. He knew where she worked, where she lived, what her son's name was, what he was studying. He knew her husband left in March 2018. Left behind $6,200 in back rent and a broken-down 2007 pickup truck she still hadn't fixed. He knew all of it. And he had stayed still, not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know what she wanted from him after 32 years. He was afraid she'd think he came back out of guilt. He was afraid she'd look at him like someone who hadn't needed him in a long time. That scared him more than being turned away. More than anything. 3 months ago, he had tried something safer. He quietly asked Raymond to submit Darius, Denise's son, for a community tech scholarship in Columbus. The application was rejected, missing a personal essay. Darius didn't know he'd been nominated. He didn't know to submit anything extra. The safe way wasn't working anymore. He picked up his phone, called Raymond. Give me her current address. 5:47 in the morning. Underground parking garage, level B2. Shaq sat in his black SUV, engine running. He hadn't moved yet. The yellow parking lights washed over the windshield in a pale glow. The smell of motor oil and damp concrete. The engine hummed steady and low, like a clock counting down. 7 feet 1 doesn't fit well in a car. He had the seat pushed all the way back. His knees still nearly touched the wheel. He was used to that. His whole life had been about making himself smaller so others had room. He thought about Denise. Not how she looked now, 44, worn-out shoes, morning shifts at the diner. He thought about her at 22. Sitting on the back steps of the practice gym in Newark. Old denim jacket, frayed at the collar. Hair pulled up. Smiling when he walked out after the last drill of the night. No one else was ever there. Just her. Every evening. Asking for nothing. He remembered the time she brought him a box of cold rice, because she knew he skipped dinner after late practice. Cold rice, but the lid was wrapped in foil, folded twice at each corner, the way you wrap something you care about. He remembered the time she sat with him for a full hour, without saying a word. He was down after a bad practice. She didn't ask what was wrong, didn't try to fix it. She was just there, close enough that he knew she wasn't leaving, far enough that he didn't feel watched. He remembered the night in June 1992, the night he wrote the note. His hand was shaking when he picked up the pen. He put it down at least 4 times. He chose to write instead of showing up in person. Not because he was a coward, he told himself. Because he didn't trust himself to look her in the eye and say goodbye without changing his mind. But from where she was standing, courage and cowardice can look the same. His mother's voice came back to him. Miss Lucille, calm and steady, the way she always was when he was running from something hard. Shaquille, running never makes anything lighter. It just makes the person running heavier. He released the brake. The car rolled up out of the garage and into the early Atlanta rain. North on I-71. 8 hours driving alone. No music, no phone calls, just the wipers and the rain on the glass, steady, unbroken, like a slow beat with no song attached. Through Georgia, through Tennessee, the rain followed him all through Kentucky. Signs counted down the distance. Louisville, 89 miles. Cincinnati, 134. Columbus, 201. He thought about distance, not the kind measured in miles. 32 years. How far had he gone in 32 years? For NBA championship rings, a doctorate in education, a business empire stretching from restaurant chains to movie theaters, from gyms to car washes. 2 marriages, and 1 desk drawer, with a plastic-wrapped piece of paper he could never bring himself to throw away. Where had Denise gone in those same 32 years? She stayed, in the most literal sense of those words. Not because she couldn't leave, but because she chose to stand where she was. Quietly, raising her son alone, working morning shifts at a diner, walking in soaked shoes every rainy day. He remembered something from his second season with Orlando. A teammate asked if he had anyone back home. He said no. That wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. The whole truth was this. He had never made room for anyone to fill the place he never officially named. The place of the person who waited on the back steps, who double-wrapped cold rice in foil, who sat beside him in silence for an hour, without asking a single question. Some people's greatness isn't in what they achieve. It's in what they endure without losing who they are. He didn't know how to name that when he was 20. At 52, he understood it completely. The sign read, Columbus, 47 miles. The sky was beginning to lighten, not sunshine, just darkness turning from black to gray to lighter gray. The rain had softened to a drizzle. He thought about what he would say. Then he let it go. No prepared words. No rehearsed lines. Last time he had prepared his words, the result was a note on a kitchen table and 32 years of silence. This time he would sit down and listen. 7:08 in the morning. Granger Avenue, Columbus, Ohio. Shaq turned off the engine. He sat in the car, wiping a small circle in the foggy window with the back of his hand. Millbrook Diner sat across the street. A red LED sign with 1 letter burned out. It read Miller OK Diner. The parking lot was cracked asphalt. The white lines faded almost to nothing. 3 cars parked at awkward angles. A 2011 Ford Escape with a cracked rear window, an old pickup truck, a blue Honda Civic with paint worn dull. Through the diner window, warm yellow light. Figures moving inside. He spotted a woman carrying a tray. Navy uniform. White apron tied at the waist. Hair pinned back with a black clip. She set a coffee cup down in front of an old man in a red cap, her back to the window. He wasn't certain it was her, but the way she placed the cup, gentle, no sound, like someone who had worked in silence for a very long time. He was certain. He sat in the car for 3 more minutes. Then he opened the door and got out. Light rain hit the shoulders of his brown canvas jacket. Plain, no brand, the kind nobody looks at twice. He pulled his cap down low. He crossed the wet street, with his head bent. He stopped at the diner door. Foggy glass. A chrome handle worn dull. A handprint on the glass that hadn't been wiped in a while. He paused. 3 seconds. Then he pushed the door open. A small bell rang, the kind attached, with a coil spring, cheap and familiar. The smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee hit him all at once, mixed with the warmth of a small crowded space. A radio in the kitchen played a weather report the announcer's voice flat and steady, predicting rain through the afternoon. Nobody looked up. He had to duck to clear the doorframe. He chose the last stool at the counter, farthest from the entrance, back against a wall painted the color of old butter. He sat down. The red vinyl stool creaked once. The man next to him was reading the Columbus Dispatch, sports section. Didn't look up. 30 seconds passed. Denise Watkins walked over from the far end of the counter, coffee pot in her hand. Eyes down on the order pad held between her fingers. "What can I get you this morning?" She looked up. She stopped. The coffee pot didn't drop. She didn't let it drop. That was reflex, built from years of carrying trays for 8 hours straight, her hands working on their own, while her mind went somewhere else. But her grip tightened around the handle. He could see the knuckles go white. They looked at each other. Neither of them spoke for 4 full seconds. The man reading the paper stopped turning pages. Then Denise turned away. No rush. No panic. She just turned, walked toward the kitchen, and pushed through the swing door. Gone. Shaq put both hands flat on the counter. Size 23 hands. Hands that had broken steel backboard mounts, just resting on the worn formica. He looked down at them. He didn't stand up. Didn't call after her. Didn't do anything. He waited. 8 minutes passed. He checked the clock twice. Then the swing door opened. Not Denise. A young man, maybe 6 feet tall, dark-skinned, hair cut short and clean, wearing a navy hoodie, with Columbus State Community College printed on the chest. He carried a glass of water and set it in front of Shaq. Clean, no spill. "My mom asked me to bring this out." He didn't look up. She said if someone's sitting here, bring water. Then he looked up and went still. His eyes landed on Shaq's face. Recognized him. Processed it once, then again. Then he settled himself, the way young people do when they decide not to be impressed. Shaq gave a small nod. Confirmed. Darius Watkins. 19 years old. Denise's only child. He pulled out the stool across from Shaq and sat down like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You know my mother." "Not a question." "A long time ago," Shaq said. Darius looked at the counter, then back up. "What are you doing here?" Straight question. No hostility. No excitement. Just the question of someone who had spent their whole life watching their mother go quiet about one man, and now that man was sitting right in front of him. "To say something I should have said 32 years ago," Shaq answered. "To my mom." "To your mom." Darius looked at him longer this time. Then he said it. Not with anger, but plain, like reporting a fact. "My mom never said a bad word about you. Not once. I asked her a lot. She always said it was grown-up business, not my concern." He paused. "But I know she keeps something in the drawer by her bed. She never showed me what it was." Shaq didn't answer. In the kitchen, behind the swing door, Denise Watkins stood, with her back against the cold brick wall, listening to everything, not moving. The shift ended at 2 in the afternoon. The diner had mostly emptied out. The sky outside hadn't brightened much, clouds still low and gray. The rain had stopped, but the pavement was still wet, catching the light in long blurry streaks. Denise untied her apron. She hung it on the hook behind the counter. She poured herself a coffee, added sugar, without measuring, then carried it to the end of the counter and sat down across from Shaq. Shaq hadn't moved from his spot. He'd been sitting there since 7. The water in front of him was long gone, ice melted. He'd ordered breakfast at 9, scrambled eggs, and toast, ate every bit, no complaints. Left a $20 tip for the other server. Not Denise. Now they were sitting across from each other for the first time in 32 years. Denise looked at him. She didn't speak right away. She just looked, the way you study the sky, before deciding whether to grab an umbrella. Not hostile. Careful. He looked older, of course. But his face was the same face, just heavier along the jaw, with lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. And he was still making himself smaller when he sat. Shoulders slightly curved, elbows tucked in, the way he always did, so he wouldn't take up too much space. She remembered that about him. "How long have you known I was here?" Her voice was steady, calm. 2 years. She looked at him. 2 years. Not a question, just the words repeated, the way you repeat something when it's too big to take in all at once. Then she set her cup down. She folded her hands on the counter. And she spoke. Not angry, not trying to hurt anyone, just quiet and level, the voice of someone who had decided to tell the truth because there was no reason left to hold it back. The part one could never get over wasn't that you left. It was that you left without asking me what I wanted. Shaq didn't interrupt. You wrote that note. You put it on the kitchen table. Then you were gone. Like you had already decided for me that I'd understand. That I'd be fine. She looked straight at him. I was 22 years old. I didn't get to say a word. I didn't get to choose anything. You took that from me, not by being cruel, by thinking you were protecting me. Her voice didn't shake. That hurt him more than anything else could have. He had imagined this moment many times, over 32 years, imagined her angry, crying, saying sharp things. He had prepared himself for all of it. He had not prepared for calm, because calm didn't mean she had forgotten. It meant she had lived with this long enough that it no longer burned, just a scar that healed wrong, no pain but always there when something pressed on it. He thought about the person who had blocked Denise's message in 2009. Someone on his team. He didn't know who, but he knew the type. The kind who thought protecting someone meant deciding for them. The kind who stood between him and anything from the past, believing that was their job. The kind who never once asked him if he wanted to be protected that way. The same mistake. Two different people. 17 years apart. You don't learn that kind of thing in school. You learn it in moments like this, sitting at the end of a diner counter on Granger Avenue, watching a 44-year-old woman hold her voice perfectly steady while she says what she has never told anyone. There's one more thing, she said. He waited. In 2009, I tried to reach you once. Her voice didn't change. Not to ask for anything, not to complain, just to say I was okay, that I didn't hate you. She paused. The message got blocked. Whoever blocked it called me back. They told me straight, Mr. O'Neill doesn't need old business coming back around. The space between them got heavier. The kitchen radio was still going. A slow old country song, deep voice, unhurried. Shaq didn't speak right away. He looked down at the counter. 3 seconds. 5. 10. Then, I didn't know that. I know you didn't. Denise looked down at her cup. That's why I don't hate you. She picked it up, but didn't drink. Just held it. But I don't need you either. No sharp edge in it. No poison. Just the truth. One she had lived. With so long it had become part of her, like her height, like the way she placed cups down, without a sound, after years of working. Shaq sat still. Outside, a bus stopped at the curb across the street. An old man got off, collar pulled up against the cold. The bus rolled on. I didn't come to ask for forgiveness, Shaq said. His voice was low and slow. And I'm not trying to take back anything that's gone. I came because there's something I never said, and I don't want to die without saying it. Denise looked at him. What you want doesn't matter, she said. Not cruel, just honest. Darius matters. I know. She set her cup down. Then ask about Darius. He asked. She answered. It wasn't a warm conversation. It wasn't the kind of reunion you see in movies. It was just two adults at the end of a quiet diner counter, talking about a 19-year-old kid who was teaching himself electronics with used parts from a flea market. Where did he learn? Shaq asked. YouTube. The library. Talked to a few electricians around here. Her voice carried something. Not quite pride, but the way a mother talks about her child when she doesn't want to show how proud she really is. What does he want to do? Electrical engineering. She looked toward the window. But he had to stop this semester. Not enough money. Shaq didn't say anything more right then. For 15 that afternoon. The back parking lot behind Millbrook Diner. The asphalt was still wet, steam rising in thin wisps from the cold air. The smell of damp ground and kitchen grease drifted out through the exhaust vent. A garbage truck sat parked at the far end of the alley. The driver ate a sandwich without looking up. Darius was sitting on the back step, headphones hanging around his neck, writing something in a small black notebook. He looked up when he heard footsteps. Shaq came out. No hurry. He sat down on the step beside the kid, had to fold himself down quite a bit, knees nearly at his chest. It probably looked ridiculous. Darius didn't smile. Tell me about your project, Shaq said. Darius looked at him. You actually want to hear it? Or are you just asking? If I was just asking, I wouldn't have sat down on this step. Darius looked at his notebook. Then he started talking, short at first, one-word answers. But Shaq kept asking. Not polite questions. Real ones. About the technical details. About what problems he'd run into. About why he chose one approach over another. And Darius opened up more with each question. He pulled out his phone and showed Shaq photos. A homemade circuit board mounted inside an old plastic case. Wires running in a way that looked complicated but followed its own clear logic. An automated input sorting system for warehouse equipment. He'd run tests on a small model. It worked 70% of the time. Is 70% good enough? Shaq asked. No. You need 95 to make it useful in the real world. What's the problem? Sensor noise in high humidity environments. I haven't figured out the filter yet. Shaq nodded. Not great job. Not a pat on the back. Just a nod. The kind you give when you're actually thinking about what you just heard. Darius looked at him differently after that. Not like someone looking at a famous person anymore. Like someone looking at a person who was really here, on this step, in this cold afternoon, asking questions that not many people would know to ask. There's someone I know, Shaq said. Head engineer at an automation company here in Columbus. His name is Terrence Webb. He's looking for someone for a technical internship. He paused. I'm not promising anything. If you're good enough, he'll take you. If you're not, he'll tell you straight. Do you want to present this project to him? Darius looked at him. You don't know if I'm good enough. That's exactly why I'm asking instead of just handing you something. A short silence fell between them, the kind you need when you're understanding the difference between being handed something and being seen. Between being helped out of pity and being given a chance because someone believes your work is real. Darius understood that difference. He was Denise Watkins' son. She had taught him that, not with words, but by the way she lived every single day. Okay, Darius said. They stayed on the step a little longer. No more talk about the circuit board or about Webb. Then Darius asked him something Shaq didn't see coming. Are you all right? Shaq looked at him. The 19-year-old son of the woman he had walked away from 32 years ago was asking if he was all right. I'm working on it, Shaq said, and it was the truth. Darius nodded slowly. Like that answer was enough. 9:17 that night. Shaq's phone buzzed. Unknown account. Instagram, no name. A blurry photo, but clear enough. A very large man sitting at the far end of a diner counter, shot from behind, ball cap on. The caption said, pretty sure that Shaq at Millbrook on Granger? LOL 340 shares. He called Raymond. Deal with it. What do you need? Nothing. Let me make the call myself. The next morning, the Columbus Dispatch called the diner. He had already called the editor an hour before, no PR team, no lawyers. Just him, his phone, and one plain statement. I was visiting an old friend. It's private. There's nothing to report. No threat in his voice. No irritation. Just clear, the kind of clear that comes from a person used to talking to adults. The story died within 18 hours. Denise called him at 6 the next morning. I don't want to become someone else's story. I know. It's handled. A short silence on the line. Thank you, she said. Then she hung up. The last morning, 7:15, Shaq parked in the same spot on Granger Avenue. No rain this time, just cold and gray, his breath showing in small clouds. He went into the diner. Same seat, same worn red vinyl stool. Denise was at the far end of the counter, taking an order from the first table. She glanced up when he came in, but didn't stop, kept writing on her pad. He waited. When she walked to his end of the counter, he didn't let her speak first. He placed a white envelope on the counter, plain, the kind from any corner store. Not sealed. She looked at the envelope. Looked at him. Open it. She took out the paper inside. Old paper, wrapped in a clear plastic bag, corners yellowed. The note from 1992. The original, not a copy. The handwriting of a 20-year-old. Fast. Blue ink faded thin. Words she had read enough times to know by heart. But at the bottom, below the old lines, there was one new line. Darker ink. The handwriting of someone older. I should have asked you what you wanted. Denise went still. She read it once. Twice. 3 times. The kitchen radio kept playing. Cups clinked at a table nearby. Someone came in, through the front door, the little bell ringing once. Then she looked up, and for the first time, since he had walked into this diner, the distance in her eyes was gone. Not warm the way movies show it. Just No longer far away. No tears. No embrace. She folded the paper and put it in her apron pocket. One nod. The nod of someone who just received something they had waited a long time for, without knowing they were waiting. Shaq stood up. He left money on the counter, exact amount for the coffee, plus the tip, ducked under the door frame. Stepped outside. Granger Avenue in the morning. Breath in small clouds. The pavement drier than yesterday. He walked toward his car. He didn't look back. 3 months later. Columbus, Ohio. Darius Watkins walked into the conference room at Webb Engineering on 5th Avenue at 2 in the afternoon. White dress shirt, the one his mother had ironed the night before, twice. Black slacks. Brown leather shoes, from the thrift store, polished till they shone. He set up his laptop, connected to the projector, opened his presentation, 14 slides, rebuilt from scratch 3 times, over 2 weeks. Terrence Webb sat across from him, 58 years old, salt and pepper hair, wireframe glasses, a pen tapping quietly on the table. 2 younger engineers sat beside him. Nobody mentioned Shaq O'Neal. Webb only knew this was someone referred to him, someone who had asked for a chance to present. Darius presented for 22 minutes. Webb asked 14 technical questions. Not polite questions, real ones, pressing into the weak spots. Darius answered 11 of them. For the other 3, he said plainly, "I don't have a solution for this yet. But I know where the problem is." Webb wrote something down. "Can you start next week?" Darius paused for 1 second. "Yes. $18.50 an hour. 20 hours a week. We expect you to solve the humidity sensor problem within 6 weeks." "Understood. If you can't solve it, we'll tell you straight." "Understood." Denise Watkins got the text from Darius at 5 that afternoon. Short, typed the way he always typed, punctuation somewhere in the wrong places. "Mom, I got in. Start next week. $18.50 per hour." She was in the diner kitchen, nearly at the end of her shift. She read it. Read it again. She didn't cry, didn't shout. She just stood there for about 10 seconds, phone in hand, looking at the screen. Then she wrote back, "You did good. I'm proud of you." A week later, an envelope came in the mail. No return name. A post office box in Atlanta for the address. Inside was a printed page with information about a restaurant management program at Columbus Culinary and Hospitality Institute, spring semester, starting in February. The first semester's tuition had already been paid. A receipt was attached. $2,840. At the bottom of the page, in handwriting, dark blue ink, slightly slanted left. "This isn't charity. This is what I owed you from 32 years ago, one chance to choose." Denise stood in the kitchen of her small apartment on Kimball Avenue. She read the page. She read that last line twice. Darius was at the kitchen table doing homework, headphones on, not looking up. She walked into the bedroom, opened the nightstand drawer, took out the note from 1992, the one with the extra line in dark blue ink at the bottom. She placed both pieces of paper side by side on her palm. The first one, from 1992, a young man's handwriting, rushed. The second one, from last week, typed clean, printed cold. 2 pieces of paper, 32 years apart. The same person wrote the last line on both. She looked at them for a moment. Then she folded them together, put them back in the same spot, closed the drawer. No tears, no smile, just a slow breath out, the kind you let out when you finally put down something you've been carrying too long. From the other room, Darius called out, "Mom, did you eat?" "I cooked." She stood up, smoothed her hair, walked out. "I'm coming." She put her phone in her pocket, sat down across from her son. Darius was eating. Didn't look up. "Everything okay, Mom?" "Everything's fine." He looked up, looked at her for a second. Then he nodded, the nod of a kid grown up enough to tell the difference between his mom saying she's fine when she isn't, and his mom actually being fine. This time she actually was. Not fine because nothing had happened. Fine because something heavy she'd been carrying for 32 years had just been set down, in the right place, at the right time. They ate dinner together without talking much. The sound of spoons in bowls. The TV low from the other room. The smell of plain rice and soup. A simple meal in a simple apartment on Kimball Avenue, Columbus, Ohio. Outside the window, night had come in. The streetlights switched on one by one down the block. Some things money can't buy. Some things an apology can't erase. But sometimes, not always, and not for everyone. Sometimes a person just needs to hear one simple sentence they should have heard a long time ago. Not, I love you. Not, I'm sorry. Just, I should have asked you what you wanted. Because behind that sentence is something that outlasts love and outlasts regret. It's the recognition that the other person had a right to be asked, that their choice mattered, that they deserved to stand at the center of their own story, not sit on the outside, receiving whatever someone else decided for them. We often think kindness means action, doing something for someone, deciding, arranging, fixing, usually fast, usually without asking. But there's another kind of kindness. A harder one. Slower. It takes more. It means stopping, turning to the person beside you, and asking, what do you want? Not, what do you need? Because people usually know what they need, without being told. But, what do you want? A question that says the other person has the right to want things. The right to choose. The right to stand at the center of their own life. Denise Watkins didn't need Shaq O'Neal to come back and save her. She had lived 32 years without him. She raised her son alone. She worked morning shifts at a diner. She stood straight through every hard day without letting her dignity get worn down. What she needed, what he finally gave her, was the recognition that she deserved to be asked. Not told. Not decided for. Asked. That's not a lesson about love. It's a lesson about respect. The question I want to leave with you isn't about Shaq or about Denise. It's this. Is there someone in your life you decided would be fine without ever asking them what they wanted? This story is fiction, inspired by the kinds of moments many of us have lived through. Shaquille O'Neal is a real person, but every situation, every piece of dialogue, and every supporting character in this story is entirely made up. Nothing here is meant to depict real events. What I hope you carry with you after this is one small thing. Sometimes the greatest act of kindness isn't helping. It's asking first.